Thank you for having me here today. Is this working? Yes. This is my first time in Halifax, so I'm really excited to be here and to be talking about my greatest passion, sustainable fashion. My name is Kelly Drennan, and I am the founding executive director of Fashion Takes Action, which is Canada's first nonprofit organization that's devoted to sustainability. This should be a really interesting panel discussion, and I'm quite honored to be in the company of Kate and Linda, who are inspiring to me in the work that I do through Fashion Takes Action. Unlike them, I haven't written a book or papers, and I'm not an educator. I'm simply one woman with a passion to make a difference. And that difference started 9 years ago when I became a mother. My background is in PR and communications, and I worked in the conventional fashion industry for many years, promoting designers at fashion weeks, product launches, and media events. But I always had an inner hippie, and despite my passion for fashion. So I was rock climbing and a backcountry canoeer and eating healthy and essentially just living a lifestyle of health and sustainability. And when my first daughter was born 9 years ago, I really sort of deepened that in terms of what I was putting on my body and her body and what I'm feeding her and even what I was washing my floors with as she's crawling around and sticking her fingers in her mouth. And so Fashion Takes Action was born out of a desire for me to make a difference in the world and to help make this planet a better place for my daughters to live and for future generations. In 2007, I created the Green Gala, Canada's greenest fashion event. It was a fundraiser for environmental defense. I took 10 of Canada's top fashion designers, and I got them each 50 meters of fabric to make 3 looks. And like I said, it was the greenest fashion event in Canada because I did learn early on that I couldn't very well show sustainable fabric on the runway and then produce a conventional fashion event. So I had to consider things like the runway itself, which ended up being 1,800 square feet of sod, which I later donated to the City of Toronto Parks and Rec. The food and the beverage, the lighting, the flowers, even the silent auction items. I had a dual flush toilet in my auction. So it was really amazing, and we received a ton of press coverage and industry recognition, which led to something that was quite unexpected.
You just turned off.
Oh, is that okay now? Oh, okay. So my phone was ringing off the hook from designers from coast to coast, asking me things like, where can I find sustainable fabric in quantities that I can afford? And is there such a thing as eco-friendly thread or recycled buttons and so on? And I was just a publicist, so I had no idea how to answer their questions. But I realized that there was obviously a need for an organization to help these pioneering designers. And so after some focus groups and some market research, Fashion Takes Action was born. And we decided that we would attempt to solve some of these growing challenges. Sorry, move this around here. Okay. All right, so now that you know a little bit about me and how I got to come here to this awesome place, I just want to give you a bit of an overview of the fashion industry and what sustainable fashion is. It really is a global epidemic that we're facing, and at Fashion Takes Action, we talk about 5 sort of main challenges that are facing the industry that need to be overcome. The first being water. Did you know that there is such a thing as a water footprint? And not just as individual consumers, but also for industry. And the fashion industry is one of the worst offenders. Just for example, for every 1 ton of textiles produced, the industry is polluting 200 tons of water. Now, to give you some more context, how many of you have swam in an Olympic-sized swimming pool? Okay, it's big. It holds 2,500 tons of water. So what this means is the textile industry is actually polluting 5,640,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools every year. How, you ask? Well, let's look at the dyeing process. Did you know that you can actually tell what color is going to be in season based on the rivers in countries like China? So these are just some examples. And then let's talk about the amount of water that goes into making our clothing, using a cotton t-shirt as an example. 1 cotton t-shirt requires 357 gallons of water, which is equivalent to 7 full bathtubs, just to make 1 t-shirt. The next offender is energy. The textile and apparel industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry producing billions of pieces of clothing every year. So making all of these clothes requires huge amounts of energy. Factor in all the stages of production from farming through to the factory into the finished product, and then consider the output of pollution and what that's doing to climate change. Waste is the third offender. Unfortunately, most of the industry hasn't quite figured out what to do with waste, particularly in the production stage and fabric scraps from the cutting room floors. And because the cost of recycling this waste is often higher than just dumping it into landfill, guess what they do? How many of you have wondered where all of the clothing in the stores that doesn't make it to the cash register go? Okay, it's like every time I'm in a mall, which isn't often, I have to admit, I ask myself this very same question. Where are all of these unwanted jeans and dresses possibly going? And how are they going to be sold? Well, the question is, they're not. They're not getting sold. So the industry has a couple of options when it comes to getting rid of unsellable clothing. They can either destroy them in industrial-sized shredders. They can just toss them into landfill. They can hire recyclers to repurpose their clothes. They can sell them to discount outlets like TJ Maxx, and they can donate them to charities like Goodwill and Salvation Army. Much to the dismay of environmentalists and charities, letting unsold clothes end up in the landfill is the method of choice. It's not only the cheapest and easiest solution, but by doing so, retailers and some fashion designers believe they will keep unwanted merchandise from flooding the market, which will protect their brand as it prevents their clothes from ending up on, God forbid, a homeless person. A few years ago, you might remember that H&M was accused of slashing their clothing before putting it out to the curb. And other companies have also been caught destroying their garments by spraying them and shredding them. This simply has to stop, and the industry just really needs to be producing less. Fourth on the offender list is toxic chemicals. Thanks to Greenpeace awareness campaigns and for putting pressure on companies like Zara and H&M and Levi's, we are starting to see some changes taking place, but it's not enough. Conventional cotton is considered the world's dirtiest crop due to its heavy use of insecticides, the most hazardous pesticide to human and animal health. Nearly $2.6 billion worth of pesticides are sprayed on cotton fields each year, accounting for more than 10% of pesticide use and 25% of insecticide use worldwide. Not only are these harmful chemicals bad for the environment, but let's consider the cotton farmer. In a 2002 study of pesticide illnesses in California, cotton ranked third for total number of worker illnesses caused by pesticides. And this doesn't even account for bystander events such as the 1996 incident in which an estimated 250 farmers were sprayed with a mixture of highly toxic pesticides being applied to a cotton field by a crop duster. Dozens of workers in an adjacent field harvesting grapes were even experiencing symptoms of pesticide poisoning. But it gets worse. Many cotton farms in developing countries such as India use manual labor to spray their cotton plants. Because of high costs, these farmers use dangerous pesticide application equipment, resulting in inadequate protection, spoils, and poisonings. In addition, since 2001, nearly 10,000 cotton farmers in India who faced overwhelming debt incurred to pay for pesticides and genetically modified seed and had nothing to show for it but failed crops have committed suicide. The dyes used for textiles are for the most part unsafe. Only 1%, 16 out of 1,600 dyes, are approved by the EPA as sound for human and environmental health. And sadly, it doesn't end there. Even our clothing in this finished product is often coated with highly toxic chemicals like flame retardants and formaldehyde, which is an anti-stain and wrinkle repellent. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure I don't want highly toxic carcinogens close to my body or my skin, which is our largest organ. Last but not least on the offender list is labor. I just spoke to the dangers of the cotton farmers being exposed to highly toxic chemicals. But what about unsafe and hazardous working conditions? That sadly affects so many in the garment industry around the world. Sweatshops do still exist, and you might be surprised to know that they do still exist in North America, despite the fact that the US has stronger labor laws than developing countries. many apparel factories in the US slip under the radar of the Department of Trade. It is estimated that 50% of apparel factories in the US are violating at least 2 or more labor laws. Bangladesh is just one country that has been riddled with the horrors and scandal of the apparel industry, from numerous factory fires to the most recent collapse of the Rana Plaza factory this past spring, which killed over 1,100 people. We all remember these horrific images. They are going to stay with us for a very long time. This is a risky industry, and not just in Bangladesh. Wages are not only extremely low, but in many cases, child labor is still used, despite the fact that there has been some progress. Bangladesh, Brazil, China, Guatemala, India, Indonesia, Morocco, the Philippines, Portugal, and Thailand are among the countries in which children are believed to help produce garments. Okay, so a recap of fashion industry offenders. We have water, energy, waste, toxic chemicals, and labor. Sorry for the doom and gloom, but it really is important, I think, to know and to understand the full scope of what is going on in the industry, because without that knowledge, it's really difficult to help make change happen. And I'm happy to say that there are some solutions. The eco or sustainable fashion movement is starting to take hold. And thankfully, an increasing number of companies are incorporating social and environmental responsibility into their bottom line. However, there still is a misconception by the masses as to what eco-fashion is, or more importantly, what it looks like. It's for hippies, it's got trees and leaves all over it, it's an itchy burlap sack, or it's pajamas. When in fact, this is what eco-fashion looks like. It graces the runways around the world in New York and Vancouver and London and Paris. Even celebrities are taking action by joining Livia Firth's Green Carpet Challenge and wearing sustainable designer gowns and tuxedos to red carpet events. The bottom line is eco-fashion shouldn't look eco. It's the story behind the garment where we actually discover that it was made sustainably. At Fashion Takes Action, we take a very holistic approach to our definition of sustainability. It isn't about just doing one thing, but there's many things that can be considered sustainable. And our definition also includes the consumer, because we do a lot of consumer-facing work, and so that's where you'll see secondhand and vintage. We're often asked by consumers, well, how can we afford sustainable fashion? Well, secondhand and vintage is a great way to be eco-conscious and on a budget. There are a growing number of organizations around the world who are devoted to solving the many problems that we are facing. And I take great comfort in knowing that we at Fashion Takes Action are not alone, but rather working together to solve these problems. These nonprofits, media outlets, working groups, academia, experts, and authors are contributing in their own important way to the greater movement. And at FTA, we strongly believe that collaboration is key to making change happen. And events like this are so inspiring because I know I'm going to leave Halifax and return to Toronto with a renewed sense of purpose, new ideas, and new connections. So what exactly does Fashion Takes Action do? I told you how we all began, but I haven't really given you a sense of what it is that we do for industry and for consumers. Here's a look at our theory of change. This is a specific and measurable description of how we want to make change happen. And this forms the basis for our strategic planning, ongoing decision-making, and evaluation. Our vision at Fashion Takes Action is to see sustainability stitched into every shoe, garment, and accessory. And our mission is threefold. The first is to help lead the movement that unifies and inspires industry, to empower the consumer with the knowledge and opportunity to make smarter purchasing decisions, and to build capacity in designers or retailers who are our members to promote and grow their business while improving their triple bottom line. So how do we help industry? Our more than 70 members from across Canada, and a few in the States and one in the UK now, have a very diverse set of experience and business needs. And so because of that, we offer a number of services to try to accommodate that diversity. So we offer things like discounts with fabric suppliers. So we have suppliers in Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver and even here in Halifax. And these suppliers offer a discount to Fashion Takes Action members. We offer business coaching and mentoring and strategic planning and marketing consultation and helping our members communicate their message in an authentic way, basically how to avoid greenwash. We do large-scale public fashion shows and trade shows where we'll take a booth and we'll sell our members clothing because the cost for them to do it on their own is just completely prohibitive. We hold networking events so that our members can meet and share resources and build connections. We have a showroom in Toronto where we offer our members the opportunity to sell their products to the public, and it's also a place for them to hold personal events like trunk shows. And we've recently launched an online store, making it that much more accessible for consumers to purchase our members' clothing. We also do a large amount of public relations and receive media coverage in local, national, and international outlets, on average receiving about 50 million media impressions a year. And we also promote our members through social media, and we help build capacity in our members so that they can do the same and promote their business through mainly Twitter and Facebook. But we also spend a great deal of our time helping the consumer. Did you know that 2/3 of the impact of our clothing actually occurs when we as consumers buy it? 2/3 of the environmental impact, sorry. According to Eco-Textile News, the largest portion of CO2 emissions in the world comes from the use phase of clothing. How we care for our clothes, how we wash it, and how we dispose has a much more negative impact than how our clothes are even made. In addition, the average person puts 68 pounds of textiles in landfill every year. And in the US alone, about 23.8 billion pounds of clothes end up in landfill. So campaigns such as our Resizing Fashion Footprint aims to raise awareness with consumers around the things that they can be doing every day. Maybe they're already doing it or they can start doing it to reduce their fashion footprint. Working with Million Acts of Green, we've created 16 acts of green as they relate to your wardrobe. So things like wash in cold water, hang dry, buy secondhand, attend clothing swaps, and so on. And we've been fortunate enough to also have some really great support from Canadian personalities and environmentalists like David Suzuki, who are helping us to really get the message out there about this campaign. For the past couple of years, we've been talking a lot about fast fashion and slow fashion, a term coined by my fellow panelist, Kate Fletcher. So I'm not going to spend a great deal of time talking about that because she's the expert. But what I do have to say really is that as consumers, we really need to slow down our consumption. We need to invest in our wardrobe. We need to buy quality, seasonless pieces that are going to last. And I'll leave it at that. We also produce consumer-facing events like fashion show fundraisers and clothing swaps, like this one we did at Fashion Week. This was a high-end clothing swap, so we proved to the well-heeled that even they could swap their designer dress that still had the price tag on it for something that was equally fashionable and in excellent condition. So we've spent a lot of time over the years at Fashion Takes Action reaching youth, and primarily it's been to the post-secondary level, which has been great. But recently I was invited by Earth Day Canada to speak at an Eco Mentors youth conference, and it was a group of high school kids. And I was really not sure what to expect. I didn't even have any media. It was like a blackboard and chalk and 50 kids. And I went overtime. They didn't want me to end the session. They were question after question, and they were so engaged, and I left feeling so inspired. And so much so that I went to my daughter's school and spoke to the teachers who teach grades 4 through 8 and said, and it was just after Rana Plaza, and so I said, this is relevant, this is timely, I need to come in here and speak to these kids, and so I did, and again, it was another aha moment for me. And so I'm really excited that we are going to continue pursuing this and working with elementary and high schools through the 2013-2014 year. And I really believe that reaching them before they're consumers is really the future. It's really hard to change our habits. We've been programmed, it's in our DNA to shop, shop, shop. And so if we can get these kids when they're 10, 11, 12, and then putting pressure on their parents and influencing what their parents are buying and influencing their peer groups, I just get really excited about thinking about what that's going to bring in the future. So where from here? Well, there's a long way to go, but it's nice, at least I feel confident that we have been making some progress, and my hope is that soon enough, it won't be called sustainable fashion, it will just be fashion. Thank you.